here now as well. All right, I'm going to begin by just going through and trying to quickly check everybody in. So as I come through and call your name or try to identify you, if you could do me a favor, just take yourself off of mute, give me your name. If the spelling is unusual, let me know how to spell your name and then tell me who you're representing here today. And I'll try and work through these as quickly as I can, just based on the orientation on my screen here. So I have a Lina, Lina. Yeah, are you there? It doesn't appear that your audio is working. I'm going to come back to you, okay? Microphone does not work. Is that right? Oh. Okay, do you just want to watch? Is that what you're saying? Okay, great, fantastic. All right, I have Sandra Jones-Mitchell. Ms. Jones-Mitchell, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Sandra Jones-Mitchell, and I'm with Serving Older Adults to Changing Times. It's a nonprofit organization that advocates on the behalf of seniors.
Okay, great, welcome.
Thank you.
I have, let's see, Wes Menzel and Emily Ahouse from the zoning department.
Can you hear me?
I can, welcome. All right, I'll move right along to, I have JP Burley, but it looks like there's both Sean Suter and JP Burley in the room. Is that right?
Yes, good morning, David and everyone. Sean Suter here with Suter LLC, JP Burley with Suter LLC on behalf of the applicant, KM Real Estate Holding Company, LTD.
Okay, great, welcome.
Thank you.
I have Mike Westerfield.
Yes, with West Tech Environmental, representing Kingsley.
West Tech Environmental.
Correct.
Okay, welcome. I have George.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Good. I'm George Berardi, project architect, representing Kingsley.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
I have a Daniel Buckenroth.
Yes, my name's Daniel. I'm representing Kingsley, the development partner.
Okay. Welcome. All right. I see we have Jonathan Evans.
Yes, good afternoon. Jonathan Evans with Evans Engineering. We do civil engineering plans and have helped put together the civil engineering plans for this project.
Okay, welcome. I have an Ozzie Davis.
How you doing? Ozzie Davis with Associates, and I'm representing project support from a community development perspective.
I'm sorry, you cut off there for a second. Did you have a name of an organization or a firm you said you were associated with?
Ozzie Davis and Associates.
Got it. All right. Okay, I have, I believe it's Sarah. Is it Pkwy?
Pkwy.
Okay.
Sarah Pkwy from the president of the North Avondale Neighborhood Association.
Sarah, I'm having a little trouble hearing you with your audio. I don't know if you can get any closer to a microphone. Or,
can you hear me now?
I can. Yeah, that's a little better. Thanks.
Okay. President of the North Avondale Neighborhood Association.
Got it. All right. Welcome. All right. Let's see. I have a J. Miles Wolf. Mr. Wolf, you could unmute. Mr. Wolf, if you could unmute for me.
Okay, I'm here. This is Miles Wolf.
And are you representing anyone today or here in an individual capacity?
I'm here as a officer of the North Avondale Business Association.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's see. Looks like we have Pkwy consulting. That looks like Mr. Ndukwe. Mr. Ndukwe, could you unmute for me?
How we doing? Chairman Duke, Kingsley County.
Okay, welcome. Let's see. I have a Walter Kusi.
Hello.
Hi. Could you tell me how to pronounce your last name?
As though the C was an S. Kuski.
Kuski. Got it. All right. And Walter, you're with the North Avondale Neighborhood Association as well, correct?
Zoning committee, yes.
Okay, welcome. All right, I have someone under the name Alan. It's just Alan. Are you with us? All right, I'll try to come back to Alan. I have a Mara Wolf. Mara Wolf, are you with us?
Yes, Mara Wolf. I'm president of North Avondale Business Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, looks like we have a few more people trying to join us here. We should be able to get started here shortly, folks. Amy Harden. Amy Harden, are you with us? Amy? Okay, we'll try to come back to Amy Harden. Yeah, Amy Harden, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. All right.
I can go anywhere.
All right, on the applicant owner side, are we expecting anyone else to join us here today?
I believe all our witnesses are present.
Okay, all right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is read through the hearing script, which basically will just cover the procedure for the hearing. For those of you that have been in one of these hearings before, we are going to go a little bit out of order today because we have some sort of pre-hearing motions that have been submitted by some community organizations. And so I will entertain those first, and then depending on the outcome of those motions, move forward with the substance of the hearing. So bear with me as I get through our hearing script here, and then we'll get started. This is the November 16th, 2022 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati. I'll be presiding over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20220159. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. We will begin today with two motions for continuance or postponement that will be coming from the Paddock Hills Community Council and the North Avondale Neighborhood Association, or I'm sorry, maybe the Paddock Hills Assembly. We will then, depending on the outcome of that, if we do move into the substance of the hearing, the applicant's attorney or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. The public will have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. If there's more than one person opposing an application, those persons can decide among themselves the length of time each will have to speak. If an opposition group is in attendance, I may request that a spokesperson be chosen to speak on behalf of the group. If the applicant is represented by an attorney, the applicant's attorney may cross-examine any person who has testified at this hearing. If a party of record is represented by an attorney, the attorney for a party of record may present witnesses after the applicant has presented its case and may cross-examine any person who has testified at this hearing. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument offered in opposition. After the applicant has been given an opportunity to rebut any testimony and or argument offered in opposition, any attorney for a party of record will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. Finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony or documents. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who is not present. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I will do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, I am going to, I think, swear in witnesses individually as we go here. But let's go back now, and I'd like to ask, is there anyone here from the Paddock Hills Assembly? I don't feel like I actually wrote down anyone from Paddock Hills Assembly. That's you, Lena. Okay, but you cannot participate in the hearing, is that right? Because of the microphone. Okay, yeah, so here's what, I think we'll have to take a quick 5-minute recess. There is a way for you to call in over the telephone, and you can speak into the telephone. So folks, I apologize again, just bear with me for just a minute. I'm gonna try to get that information to her as quickly as possible here. So give me 1 second. Lena, could you tell me, is your email the one associated with the Paddock Hills General Assembly? You'll just have to nod. So Lena, can you hear me? Is your email or contact information been shared with us at all? Have you emailed me directly? Could you email me right now so that I can respond to that email with the dial-in number so that we can get you on audio? Okay. Lena, I have sent you the dial-in information. You should be able to call in and participate via audio. I would keep your video working so that we can see you. But once you dial that number, you should be able to join in. So like I said, we have several folks that have asked for a continuance on this. So I think one of them is Patricia Reneker. Ms. Reneker, are you with us?
I am.
Did you ask for a postponement on this?
I did not ask for a postponement.
Okay, all right.
I sent an email with my thoughts, but I did not send a postponement.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thanks. So we'll come to you later then. Appreciate it. I think we're ready. Can you hear us, Lena?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Could you do you mind turning the volume down on your computer?
Sure. Oh, all kinds of feedback. Okay.
All right.
Better?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now you had a motion for continuance, correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And how much time were you looking for to continue this hearing?
Preferably 60 days.
60.
So we can 60.
Okay. Okay, I just want to get a sense for that before we got started. And then we also had from the North Avondale Neighborhood Association, they also had a continuance request if we still have Kara Kuski, Ms. Kuski. I assume you're speaking on behalf of NANA today.
Yes.
How long of a continuance request were you asking for today?
We're also asking for 60 days.
For 60 days?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So before we get into more of the substance of this request, I'd like to go over to the attorneys for the applicant or the attorneys for the owner here. Mr. Suter, Mr. Burley, are you willing to agree to a continuance for 60 days?
We addressed that with the client and the answer is no, we're not willing to extend for 60 days. We would like to proceed today because I think we have all parties here that can have the discussion and we can address any of the issues that are being raised by folks from the community. You know, we're talking about 5 variances. The property is permitted by right. Sorry, the use is permitted by right. The density is permitted by right. So,
Mr. Suter, I think we're going to have to jump deeper into this continuance. So I will give you time to respond to all the claims and the motion for continuance from them. I'm just trying to see if there was any appetite on either side for any amount of continuance that would be, you know, agreeable. For instance, if we were talking about 2 weeks, would that be something that either side would be willing to agree to?
How about 30 days? Our most of the neighborhood associations only meet monthly. So it would be, you know, we really need to educate
Ms. Kuski, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I said most of these neighborhood associations only meet monthly. Trying to notify everybody.
Okay, Ms. Kuski, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Wes, is that just me? Okay, it's everybody. Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't understand. I could hear that she was talking, but I couldn't understand her.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask you to call in the same way we just had Lena call in, so that we can make sure that we can hear you. Or I don't know if you're in the same place as Walter, but you guys can use the same screen. If that's working better.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to go down into the wall.
Going to share screens with Walter?
Yes.
Okay, great. So again, Mr. Suter, Mr. Burley, let me just, you said you don't want to agree to a continuance. Is there any amount of time that you would be willing to agree to so that you can try to respond to any of the concerns from the communities?
We prefer to proceed today, but I'd have to defer to Chinandum to respond to that on the spot request.
Mr. Ndukwe?
Yeah, thank you, David. Just echoing what Sean just said, it's taken a lot to manage everyone's schedules around this time to address all the concerns of the community. So at this point in time, we'd like to proceed.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Lena, if you're still with us, if you could go ahead.
I am.
And please go ahead and make your formal motion for a continuance.
We formally would like to ask for a continuance because there are 2 points of notification for this project. One was the February 10th to April 4th, 2022. The applicant was required through the application from OFA to notify the governing body where the project is located that public comment was being accepted on any impact the project might have on the community. There was no outreach by the city or the team for Victory Vistas communicating to Paddock Hills that this project was considered for a large sum of competitive taxpayer-funded tax credits. Also, we were required to have 14 days in advance of public hearing. We received the actual postcard in the mail 2 days ago on November 14th. I realized that when it's sent out is what the city goes by, but the postmark was on November 2nd at a Pitney Bowes machine. Post office did not postmark it until November 5th, 2022, which was several days after the required notice. We have attended a meeting with Nana. We've worked in a couple meetings together, and Mr. Ndukwe had mentioned that he was going to be applying for a variance on the parking, and then come to find out that the variance had already been applied for on October 5th. So we scrambled to get all the information, do a lot of research, and then write a rebuttal to the hearing, but in consideration, we'd like to have at least a 30-day continuance. The postcard I did email to you this morning because I realized I hadn't scanned it in, and I also have sent this statement here for your consideration. We've gone ahead and asked Mr. Ndukwe several questions, which he has never replied to help us better understand how he was going to make the project fit on a very small lot with a hillside and the variances with the parking setbacks on the side yard, front yard, and every other location. And also, as Sarah, I believe, was saying, we couldn't hear, was that we're volunteers. We do this because we love our communities and we want everything to work properly and we care about them. And since we're volunteers, it's very tough for us to have any kind of meetings, emergency meetings, because of people's schedules, as he just mentioned. So that is the reason that we're respectfully asking for a continuance of this hearing, for the official zoning hearing.
Gotcha. And you believe that it would take roughly 60 days to properly evaluate this project and provide input from the community?
I think to gather all the information from all the entities and all the specifics that we're concerned about, because we are all volunteers, that it would be helpful to have 60 days.
Okay. And you mentioned that you got the postcard from our office on the 14th. When did you actually become aware of the hearing date?
I think on the 3rd, but I'm not positive because I'd have to look back at my phone to figure out when I spoke with Cassandra.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thanks. Anything else you want to say on this?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. Let's go then. Let's move to the Pkwy's. If you guys are with us, Walter or Sarah. Walter or Sarah, you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Could you activate your camera for me? Great. Hey guys. Okay. Would you also like to make a motion for continuance?
So yes, North Avondale Neighborhood Association would like to request a postponement of the zoning hearing
until a number of questions are answered, including but not limited to the following. Lack of community engagement. North Avondale Neighborhood Association does not believe that the city properly notified our residents of the hearing. We still have not received any notice. In addition, Kingsley appeared at our November 1st meeting, and obviously the variance had already been submitted, but he I would say did not agreed that there was a variance had been submitted. So there was no discussion at our meeting, very limited discussion that there was even a variance. We didn't find out about the variance until Paddock Hills notified us. In fact, that's how we also found out about the project this summer from Paddock Hills. At no time were we notified. We weren't notified by Kingsley until August 23rd. So we're also asking we have asked Kingsley for additional information on the environmental impact study, or the phase 1 and phase 2. The site, we believe, is contaminated from a previous use. And we're asking for that information so we can have it evaluated, as well as the remediation plan. We also believe that there's a hillside overlay district issue. And we reviewed the city CAGIS maps and believe that this project is impacted by the hillside overlay district and is unable to support the adequate parking. We also have requested a traffic study. We don't believe that there's been a traffic study. So the property is actually in Paddock Hills, but all the traffic will be out on Asman, and that is definitely in North Avondale. So we have to have time. So we just got Kingsley into our meeting on November 1st. We just found out about the hearing by word of mouth on November 3rd. So we have to get with our residents. The residents only meet monthly. We're all volunteers, just like Paddock Hill said. So we need time to notify everybody. We've done some research, but we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. And we feel like we need to educate our neighbors and our residents.
Gotcha. Okay. And just a couple of follow-up questions on that. And I'm going to do something a little bit out of order here, but I want to make sure that the record is clear and clean on this. I do need to swear in all of our witnesses. And so if I could have both Walter and Sarah, if you could both raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you have given and shall give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And Lena, if you could also raise your right hand. Do you solemnly
Okay, it's actually Lina, Lina, or ORR.
Sorry about that, Lina. Lina, do you swear the
That's
testimony
okay.
you have given and will give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Kuski, just a couple follow-up questions. You said you first became aware that Kingsley and Company was interested in this project on August 23rd.
No, we actually were notified. I apologize. We were notified in August by Paddock Hills Assembly. They invited us to their meeting, but we were not contacted by Kingsley until August 23rd.
Got it. Okay. And you said that you didn't become aware of the hearing until November 3rd.
Correct.
Okay. And
We, by word of mouth from Paddock Hills again. That's when we called Cassandra.
got it. Okay. And then you said, I also remember you submitting that Mr. Ndugwe attended a hearing of yours, right?
He attended our November 1st monthly meeting for our executive board, which was the 1st of November.
And did he speak at that hearing?
Yes, he did.
And was it to talk about this project?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Yeah, but you're saying you don't remember him actually mentioning that there was a hearing date set.
Oh, no, he clearly said that he had not. First, he said we had applied, then I believe, these are not his exact words, that they were preparing to apply for a variance. And then we also were promised information on the environmental issues. And that we even followed up with an email, and that was never responded to.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Is there anything else, Ms. Kuski, you'd like to share in regards to your motion for continuance? At this point, if you and Lina will both have an opportunity to talk more about the substance of this, depending on the outcome of this motion. But in terms of just the motion for continuance, anything you want to provide?
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right, we'll now go to counsel for the owner or for Kingsley here.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Suter, are you, and Mr. Burley, are you ready to respond to this motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Sturkey and members of the community. My understanding, and we weren't involved at the time, but my understanding from talking with my client is that the city of Cincinnati was notified through the OFA application. And my understanding is that the applicant met with Paddock Hills on March 28th and outlined the project that was applied for. Understand that my client also met with Paddock Hills on July 25th to notify them that they were awarded the tax credits and the project was moving forward. I think the meeting with North Avondale certainly was a courteous thing to do, even though the property is not located technically in North Avondale, but that it does have impacts on the surrounding communities. So that was also done. I was not present at that. I don't know exactly what was said there, but the client is planning to move forward with this funding in March. So on construction on the project. So the delay, any kind of sizable delay here will delay the project. And since we have everyone here, I think this is an opportunity to address all the questions and concerns of the neighborhoods. And we have all the experts here to do that. So I think this is a good time to actually air this and talk about why we need these variances and proceed now rather than delaying the project. If there's additional information we need to provide, we can do that. But I think at this point we have everybody here. We might as well proceed with it, and that would be our preference. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Suter. So I've had a chance to review the motions, both in writing and all the other materials submitted. I did my due diligence on this side to make sure that notice was properly sent. And as far as I could tell, every single procedure required by us by code and everything we do on every case was followed on this. That means that the organization that we had, the community organization that we have attached to this address, Paddock Hills Assembly, was notified. Our paper notification went out on November 2nd, meaning that it was given to the post office on November 2nd. I've heard information here today that you had actual notice on November 3rd, which is actually sometimes sooner than some projects. Mr. Pkwy had made several attempts to make the community organizations aware of this project. I don't see any reason based on the law or otherwise that I can grant a continuance on this hearing here today. So I believe that we will need to go forward. I will put more of that in writing in my final decision, but I think we'll need to move forward today on the substance of the hearing. Okay, so with that said, we are going to start with the presentation by the applicant. Mr. Suter, as you know, I'm pretty liberal on how you want to orient these presentations. So if you would like to just call witnesses and have them testify individually, that's fine. If you want to direct them with specific questions, that's also fine. What I would like to do before we get started is to swear in all of your anticipated witnesses collectively. And so anyone that intends on answering questions on behalf of the owner, the applicant, Kingsley and Company, if you could please take yourself off mute, activate your camera. I need everyone to raise their right hand and to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
And I think Mr. Westerfield and Mr. Berardi, I'll need you guys to be off mute when you swear. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Okay, great. And Mr. Evans?
Yes, I do.
Okay, Thank you. All right. Mr. Suter, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sturkey. Again, Sean Suter and JP Burley here on behalf of the applicant KM Real Estate Holding Company LTD and Kingsley Company, the developer. This project is an important project for adding housing, senior housing to the city of Cincinnati. Not only has it been funded, as we discussed, it will create 50 units of affordable senior housing for the Cincinnati seniors. And that means that it'll be affordable to senior residents earning 30 to 60% of the area median income, which is a huge need for that. And I'm not sure anybody would probably disagree that there's a huge need with that. The property does present some practical difficulties, admittedly. It is zoned RM 1.2. So the property is zoned for multifamily dwellings at a maximum density of 1,200 square feet per unit. So we fall within that, and our use is permitted by right. There are multifamily buildings within the direct vicinity, if not across the street, from the subject property. So the use is right, and we're dealing with a property that does have some challenges. There is some topography going down to Victory Parkway. That's going to limit where we can put things. And that's essentially what the variance application is all about. And, you know, the parking minimums, so we'll go through each one. We have 5 requests, as you know, from the application. The staff, planning staff agreed that these were justified. One is a special exception from the standards for parking location, and that's necessary due to the topography and the site limitations. A parking variance of 16 spaces from section 1425.19, a rear yard setback variance of 12 feet from 1405.07, a side yard setback variance of 0.8 feet, 1405.07, and then a locational variance relative to the location of the refuse container dumpster at 1421.35. So all of those things are necessary to make this project work because of the site constraints. With me today is the developer, Mr. Chindum Ndukwe, who can testify to the need for the project and the development program, along with Daniel Buchenroth, who is also part of the development team, and he can answer questions about the need for these variances. You already were introduced to Sandra Jones Mitchell. This is a senior organization that is planning to provide some services to the residents of the building. We have George Berardi. He's the project designer here. Jonathan Evans, who's the civil engineer, and Mike Westerfield, who is from West Tech Environmental, and who's going to discuss the environmental issues with the site and a plan for remediation. So hopefully all of these folks, all these experts who are here with us today, can address any of the questions or issues raised by anyone in the neighborhood, and we can hopefully, like I said, address those today in this hearing. So what I think we'd like to do as part of our presentation here today, in addition to the written application, which goes through the public interest for why this relief should be granted in much detail, I think what it would be good is just to go through and ask each of the witnesses to testify today, and just to speak. Really, I don't think we need to lead them with a lot of questions, just to give their presentation on why these variances and special exception are necessary in order to make this project a reality. Again, we've got a very important and very prescient need for affordable senior housing in Cincinnati. This property is already zoned for multifamily housing. We don't see any appreciable impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. We're not taking an existing big single family home and cutting it up or anything like that. This is taking a site that's blighted, that is in need of activation, and doing so, we think, in a responsible manner that's going to provide much needed affordable housing in the city, in a really quality product. So, but we have some site constraints, and so that's what we want to address here today. We thank you for your time and attention to this. And with that, we'll turn it over to my colleague JP Burley, who's going to present the witnesses. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our first witness we will call Mr. Daniel Buckenroth with Kingsley and Company.
Thank you, JP. I'm going to give a project overview. So Victory Vistas is a senior affordable housing project. It's going to be 50 units, 31 bedrooms, 22 bedrooms. It will be a 4-story elevator building that'll be energy efficient, built to LEED standards. There's 59 parking spaces on site. It started with 45. After attending community council meetings with Paddock Hills, we tried to maximize the site as much as possible. And 59 parking spaces is the maximum we can fit just based on the topography of the site. So the building will also have an on-site fitness center, community room, and a library for residents. And then the building will have on-site property management, which is Fairfield Homes. So they have 40 plus years of experience in managing LIHTC properties, and they actually manage over 2,500 units in Ohio currently. Overall, this project will be about $14.5 million budget. So we're making a major investment into the area. This project's going to be mainly funded by the 9% LIHTC credits with your traditional perm debt and construction debt. And then this project will have an economic benefit to the city of Cincinnati and existing members in the community. The project will create 2 full-time jobs, a property manager and then a maintenance technician. And then during construction, we estimate it'll create 80 temporary full-time jobs. And then we also plan to use local subs from the city of Cincinnati. And we plan to meet the MDE goal that the city of Cincinnati has on this project. Additionally, this project will create additional property tax revenue for the city of Cincinnati, which currently right now is just land with a shed on it. There's not much revenue for the city from a property tax perspective. As Sean outlined earlier, we've done several community engagement sessions on this. So we actually met with Paddock Hills on March 28th to introduce the project Victory Vistas. We notified them that we were applying for the LIHTC tax credits at the time. We hadn't been awarded, and we told them that we would be back later in the summertime once the awards came out. So we met with them again on July 25th to give a project update, changes to the site, and then also let them know that we were awarded tax credits and the project would be moving forward. And then as a courtesy, we met with the North Avondale Community Council, since they are neighbors, on November 1st, and we introduced ourselves and answered any questions that they may have. I'll leave kind of the questions that we have. I know there are a lot of questions about the environmental and the topography, which I'll leave those to Mike with West Tech. He will be great to answer those, and Jonathan Evans as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And before we let you go, could you just let us know what your role is at Kingsley?
Yes, I'm a development analyst with Kingsley.
Okay, thank you very much. That was very thorough and efficient. Appreciate it. Let's move on to Mr. Ndukwe.
Good afternoon, Chinedum Ndukwe. I'm the principal of Kingsley & Co. And I'll be extremely brief because we do have some other professionals that can really address and talk to some of the concerns that have been shared. And I'll say this: we're a small business, real estate development company. I made the decision to be based here in Cincinnati. Daniel Buckenroth, who's on the line, turned down a job with Price Waterhouse-Coopers to come on board with our entity. Rebecca Walker in our office is our administrative assistant. Took the risk of working with us 4 years ago. Hunter Clemens, who oversees all of our construction, really left a really good paying job to come on board with Kingsley. And I say that because we're a small business that's certified minority owned. And we are extremely passionate about affordable housing and redeveloping underutilized properties in the urban core. And I think that's important, as Daniel referenced, our efforts to engage the community. As Sean had mentioned, our courtesy, even though the site isn't in Paddock Hills, to give a courtesy and answer questions, or even though the site isn't in North Avondale, to answer questions to the North Avondale Community Council. It's a big deal for us. This project is a big deal for the residents that desperately need housing in the city that is so extremely scarce. And I'm so proud of our development partner, Sandra Jones Mitchell, who this will be her first real estate development deal that she's done, but it's not her first time providing these critical supportive wraparound services that are voluntary for the residents. And she's been in this business for 30 plus years. For her to partner with our development firm, it's such a big deal. And for us to be successful in moving forward and redeveloping this underutilized property is a big deal. And so we appreciate it. We're excited to break ground in March of next year to really address the affordable housing problem for our seniors. So with that, I will turn my time back over to JP.
Thank you so much for that. But before we let you go, could you tell us a little bit more about the type of residents that'll be living at this building?
Yeah, absolutely. And Sandra's on this call today. She's graciously, tuned in so that, and she can share even more. But in order to live at this building, you have to be 55 years or older. The type of resident is someone that has historically not had access to housing. It is going to be in the range between 30 to 60% of the average median income. And that's so important because as we are entering this next phase of our economy, even though interest rates are going up, which makes it harder for people like these seniors that will be living in this facility to acquire and buy houses, the rent is also going up. And so it's critical to understand that this product is going to be geared towards someone that is working, does have a job, but also wants and really justifiably so should have access to a safe, clean, affordable house.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Next, we'd like to call Ms. Sandra Jones Mitchell, please.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity. This is a very huge project, and I believe that the organization serving older adults through changing time, is up for the challenge. 30 years of experience of working with our seniors throughout the Cincinnati area, primarily in Avondale, North Avondale, Paddock Hills, have been our anchor communities. We are now serving seniors in Hamilton and Butler County. Senior housing is extremely important. And one of the things I realized is that having someone on site to help manage some of the services that they need is vital. A lot of times what happens in a lot of our senior housing, what I've seen in the past, fundings were cut and folks just wasn't able to provide a social worker, a case manager in some of these facilities. SOAC would be available on site to be able to help the seniors manage some of their services that they're in need of, and to be able to help them navigate through the system. One of the things I struggle with sometimes with our elders, we don't have patience with them, right? A lot of them do not understand some of the things that are happening now. And I think COVID was a prime example of how ill prepared they were to deal with technology, calling a doctor, calling a pharmacist, just doing telehealth was just crucial to a lot of our seniors and detrimental to some of their health. A lot of their systems and blood pressures and health issues got out of whack during that time. And I would bet you quite a few of them suffered. In fact, when you think about COVID, I think over 60% of the population that died was 65 years and older. So thinking about having a service like this, where I would be on site, me and my team, helping those seniors navigate through the system, through the services that they're in need of. This is a great project. I understand the concerns of the neighborhood. I live in the neighborhood. I'm the former president of Avondale Community Council. I've been involved with the Avondale Community Council for 40+ years. I currently sit on that board of the Avondale Community Council. I know how crucial housing is. I'm dealing with situations now with the metropolitan housing, just making sure that those seniors in those homes are getting the services that they need. Do metropolitan housing pay me? No, but SOAC has an opportunity to have the resources available to those seniors, regardless of the payment coming from metropolitan housing or not. So what I see here is just an opportunity to show those seniors that they are cared about, will be seen about, and also have a service to them that would allow them to grow and age in place. And having a nice place such as this place is going to be very exciting for many of them. I can tell you they are excited about it. We have board members that are elders and they're excited about it. If you go around and look at most of our senior houses within the city of Cincinnati, parking is not an issue. Many of them do not drive and many of them cannot afford a car. They can't afford insurance. And what they do to their poor health, it's just not happening. And I wish we could have all the visitors in the world to come and visit them in their homes and see them. I can tell you that's not happening either. The seniors are in need of additional services such as SOAC to be able to provide them with that wraparound service. So I'm definitely in support of this project. I know that we can do a great job in helping the seniors and the community. One of the skills that I work on, my background is community engagement. We just had a huge meeting yesterday with Pastor Tate talking about how do we engage the residents. And you're going to be able to hear from other folks, I'm sure on this call, to talk about community engagement is extremely important, and having our community seniors involved is extremely important to us. So I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mitchell. Just to be clear though, the residents are not required to receive your services to live there, right?
Correct.
This is optional, that they could take advantage of if they want to.
Yes, optional, in which most of the seniors we serve are optional. So we don't force anyone. We just try to make it exciting for them to want to participate. Like last night, we took 30 seniors to hear the Black violinist. That was optional. They didn't have to go.
It sounds like you're providing a wide range of services. Could you give us an idea of what are some of the most common requests that these older residents might need help with?
I think just managing and understanding, like now Medicaid, the issues that's coming up now, how to pick a good plan. So we contract out with several other organizations that provide that service. I have 2 ladies on my board that have worked in that industry for over 35 years. I have them at my disposal. A lot of the seniors are not sure what plans to provide with. And then switching doctors, understanding that because you go to the emergency room, that does not mean you have a primary care physician. So how do you pick a primary care physician? What does that look like? So dedicated seniors is new to town. We're asking them to be of some help. That's one way that we can continue to educate our seniors, and having one place to go that can manage their health care. Home modification is another, it's huge. Making sure that we understand that aging in place means making my house safe. So trying to reach out to people working cooperatively, the Council on Aging, to make sure that those seniors have those places and those things that they need to age in place. Food is huge. So we're partnered with the Cincinnati Free Store with the Healthy Harvest mobile van, making sure we provide fresh produce to a lot of our seniors, and then helping them to understand the medications that they're taking. A lot of times we have to make sure that the pharmaceuticals and that the folks over at Walgreens or Mulaney's, whoever they're getting their medicine from, explain to them why they're taking it, how long they should be taking it, and then encouraging them to enlarge the print on some of those bottles so that they can see them. So when they don't understand the medicine that they're taking, we just make a phone call. We make a phone call to their doctor. We try to get the family engaged in creating an aging plan, taking care of those caregivers that are caring for them. What does that look like? So we're partnered with Closing the Health Gap and working with them and to say, help our caregivers take better care of themselves. So when they're caring for their aging loved ones, they won't get burnt out. Because it can be very stressful when you're caring for an aging loved one that needs a lot of help. And then housing. Housing is so crucial. We have a young, when I say young to me is anyone 60 and up. Most folks is just the opposite. A 75-year-old man is being put out on the streets because he can't pay his rent. Well, he could not read and understand the certification notice. So we got to help with the reading piece. How do you read mail to a 75-year-old person that has a great deal of pride? And pride is one of the things I think keep our seniors from asking for help. So we try to make sure that we build those personal relationships. And there's boots on the street. How we get to meet you? How do we know you? How do you know us? And then the trust factor. That is so huge with our elders because a lot of them have been scammed. So I sit on Pro Senior Board and I can tell you some of the cases that come through there is frightening. We need to educate our seniors, our older adults on what it's like when someone calls you and asks for your social security number. You don't give that up. It's many commercials that the Attorney General and all these folks are putting out there. I can tell you they still give up their information. So we have to educate them on that.
Thank you so much for that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the zoning?
No, I just hope and pray that there's a service like SOAC when I grow old, you know, that provide that wraparound services that make sure that things are in order in my life and help me plan to grow old. And I think we can do that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mitchell. Next, we'd like to call the chief architect on this project, Mr. George Berardi.
Great, thank you. My name is George Berardi. My firm is Berardi Partners. We have offices in several different states. And just to point out, one of the things that is our principal goal in developing senior housing is to develop an environment to really foster a sense of safety, security, and really blend in a sense of, create a sense of dignity, you know, for our residents always. Beyond that, you know, in terms of the nuts and bolts, we really do everything that we can to create the most sustainable environments. And we talk about, you know, whether it's 30% AMI or 40% AMI, regardless, someone has to pay some bills. And so we try to create the most environmentally sound buildings that we can find, that we can really develop. We've been doing the same thing for the last 41 years, have occupied some greater actually than 200,000 units across the country, many in Ohio. We are probably the largest firm providing design services for elderly environments and low-income housing tax credit projects in the state of Ohio. We're the highest funded. We've been the highest funded for the last probably 5 or 6 years. But when I think we want to talk about the property more than Berardi and what we do. I think that to me, when I first saw the property, the first thing I saw was an opportunity to really blend in a building in what I would consider somewhat of a defensible environment, certainly one that would be a prominent location for a building. The first thing that I recognized was that we're surrounded by, on the east side, we have Victory Parkway, of course, with a good bit of good long-term growth, as well as on the west side and the north side. The other thing that I noticed is surrounding us, besides the police department, you know, we have a landscape company on the one side. We have more apartments to the north along Victory, and certainly some additional apartments along Asman, as was mentioned earlier. In any case, we saw it as an ideal environment to locate, you know, a building. And given the height of the building, based again on what is permitted by the current zoning, we were able to really achieve something that developed a property that could provide not only housing, 50 housing units in combination of 1 and 2 bedroom units, but one that provides all the special spaces and accommodations to really support the needs of these elderly populations, you know, really that we serve. One of the things I want to go back to, one thing that Sandra mentioned, you know, a bit ago, and that is that it was with regard to parking. There was a question along the way with parking, and we completed a study a number of years ago for one of our clients, a 31-year client, in fact, National Church Residences based here in Columbus, Ohio. We found that in our earlier environments, you know, we occupy somewhere between 0.45 spaces per dwelling unit in parking. And I think Sandra best illustrated that by mentioning that a lot of our elderly don't have, number one, they don't drive, but secondly, they don't have cars to drive. We end up developing parking areas, that become really nothing more than areas that we have to drain, that becomes part of our basic infrastructure that we have to manage on site. So parking for us, especially for elderly environments, has been something that even in all the other housing that we've completed in Cincinnati, especially the old Section 202 program, which some of you may remember, we were parking 0.5 to 1, to 1 unit. We have no problem with parking. The building.
Mr. Berardi, I'd like to dig in on that a little bit. So, the zoning code here requires 1.5 spaces
Yes.
per unit, which would make the requirement here 75. You're proposing 59. You're saying that based on your experience with similar types of developments, with seniors and with low income, that there is less reliance on automobiles?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's across the board. I think that studies have been completed along the way. I don't have one handy to really quote from it, but I can assure you that most elderly environments, don't populate their parking lots with much more than half a space per unit. And again, we end up developing these larger parking lots and end up having to manage runoff from these parking lots. Now, you say to yourself, well, there are going to be visitors. Well, Sandra hit it right on the head. I don't really know the total number of elderly housing units that we built around the country, out of 250,000 units, maybe 100,000 units. The sad part of that is I challenge anyone to go to an elderly environment, nursing home, assisted living, to see how many visitors there are on a holiday weekend. It doesn't really happen. We want to think of ourselves because I went when my mother was in AL, and maybe someone else on this panel goes to see their parent, but it doesn't really happen across the board to where if you have 50 dwelling units to where on Christmas or some national holiday, you would have 50 visitors. You don't populate those facilities by visitors at all, hardly at all. And then you have the spillover with additional parking that we really don't need. And it really just creates an infrastructure issue in terms of, number one, having to construct that extra pavement, but then we have to manage the runoff from it.
Got it. And you may not know this, that may be a question for someone else, but is 50 units may now be 50 residents, or will there be multiple residents in each unit?
It's likely that it'll be only 50 residents. It's entirely possible that we have some 2-bedroom units, entirely possible that a married couple may use a 2-bedroom unit. And in the elderly, they normally would sleep in separate bedrooms, but regardless, we would have probably not much more than 50 occupants on this property.
Does anyone on the call know that answer for certain, whether these are units are restricted to a certain number of residents?
Well, they're not by, fair housing. Fair housing doesn't tell you, 1 bedroom potentially could occupy 2 persons.
So a 2-bedroom unit is considered 1 unit.
Yes.
And you could have 4 or 5 people in that unit if they chose to.
Well, management would probably prohibit that.
But Mr. Suter, is there anyone on the call that can answer that question?
Either Daniel or Chin, are you able to answer the question about what the overall population will be for that property?
Jen, you want to take it or you want me to answer?
Go ahead, D.
It's hard to say for certain exactly how many people will be occupying the property. Like George mentioned, we do have 2-bedroom units in here. So, there's a chance that an elderly person has their grandkid that they take care of. So, it's possible that those 2-bedroom units hold 2 people in it or possibly 3. But a 1-bedroom unit having 4 to 5 people, that's something the management company wouldn't allow. Again, we haven't drafted our leases yet. There is a LIHTC lease that we have to follow, but there would be a maximum number of people that are allowed per unit. But again, it's hard to estimate exactly how many people are going to be living in the building without signed leases at this point.
I will also add that you mentioned 1 or 2 children. Those are visitors, not residents. I think that the property is, and again, it'll be reflected in your leases, but the typical leases that we've seen with OFA projects are that, you know, they're limited to a specific resident. Now, will a grandchild come during the day to visit? Possibly, yes.
Okay. All right. I think that's all the questions I had now. Mr. Burrow, you can continue your testimony.
Well, again, part of the question was the location of the building setbacks to the west side of the building, and I thought that by moving the building off the hillside, it solves 2 problems. Number one, it gets us away from the hillside, which, you know, could create a structural issue. But more importantly, that side of the property, the west side or the east side of the property towards Victory Parkway, is an area that has some soil issues. You know, we have soils in several of the borings that are not compatible with what we would want to build, that are unsupported soils that are 30 feet deep. So we have soils issues on that side of the property, whereas as we move west on the property, we have less. We have some fill materials, undefined fill materials that are 2 and 3 feet deep, but nothing that really prevents us from constructing anything. So, I mean, the placement of the building, the location of the parking, of course, is immediately off of Asman. We have access point in the middle of the building. We slid the building actually farther north on the property with purpose in order to have more open area at the south end for parking. And again, moving the building closer to the west line really promotes, you know, better construction possibilities for us, avoiding the need for really working on a site with severe soil conditions.
Good. So one question on is any part of this building going to be located within the Hillside Overlay District?
I don't know where the define, maybe Jonathan can address that, but I believe that there was a line that was drawn, Jonathan, on the survey, and I'm addressing Jonathan Evans at this point, but I didn't see anything that places the building on the hillside. We're off of the hillside. The closest point may be some 15 or 20 feet away at the northeast corner from the hillside. So we are inboard of the hillside completely.
Will there be any alteration or disturbance to the hillside at all as a result of this project?
None planned.
Okay, so no parking, nothing at all in the hillside. The hillside won't be touched.
None anticipated. The only suggestion that we had made, just from a practical standpoint, was developing a stair access down from our site down to Victory Parkway. So there would be that disturbance of the hillside, roughly at the midpoint of the site.
Okay.
Mr. Berardi, you gave a very thorough explanation about the number of parking spots and how this is probably well more than is necessary for the number of units here. Could you tell us about the location of the parking in the front, as explain to us why the parking had to be where it is?
Well, I appreciate the comment. I mean, quite simple, really. To locate the building or the parking to the north side would have meant long driveways and much more restricted area available for us to build it there. And effectively, the amount of area available at the north side for the parking that we were required to have, or that we wanted to have, just doesn't exist. The land mass doesn't exist. You can see that on a plan that's before you, but which is why we located it at the south end of the property, which was a broader area. Just by virtue of looking at the survey, you see how the triangle, it's not quite a triangle, but the triangular shape of the site really is broadened as you come down to Asman. So it was natural to place the parking where we had the larger mass, with a building footprint being approximately 60 feet deep would fit in the narrowest part of the site. When I mean 60 feet deep, I mean the width of the building, the depth of the building, front to back, is only about 60 feet. So it's really what we refer to as a bar building that could slide into the narrowest part of the site, which is what we've done.
And could you explain to us why you came up with the size and shape of the building that you did? What constraints are you working with for this particular project, please?
Well, the site is all, the only constraint on developing this building the way it is the site. I mean, we had really the effective area that could be used for building was a narrow slot in the northwest side. And we created what I refer to again as a bar building, which is a simple rectangular building, so we could slide it as far north as possible. Again, as I mentioned, the bottom of the site, the south edge of the site, is the broadest part of the site. And that's the area that we needed for available parking. Not moving up, we wouldn't have enough space at the north end of the site to really locate all the parking that we wanted to really have.
Sure. And related to the location of the parking, why does the refuse container, the dumpster, have to go where it is currently planned, please?
Yeah, that's a good question. That could be moved elsewhere, and I think that we'll work with Jonathan Evans to determine, how to best locate it. But it really is the most direct route to it, and it'd be fenced with a decorative fence. But it could be relocated elsewhere on site as long as we have some maneuvering area for it.
Yeah, and you have provided the required landscaping and screening around that dumpster, correct?
Well, there will be, of course. And by the way, just so that everyone understands, when we've shown some tree growth in some areas around the property or whether around the dumpster, keeping in mind that we have certain standards that we have to meet for Ohio Housing Finance Agency in terms of final design, which we will meet. And that means screening, the type of vegetation that we use for our own screening, fencing, the type of fencing that we use. In other words, we will no doubt, it'll be an opaque enclosure around the dumpster area, but then it'll all be screened as well, just to minimize the impact minimize the visual impact of what is a trash station. And I could see one location, maybe a better location, maybe at the south west corner of the building. And I mention that only because we have access from a maintenance area coming down from a sidewalk along the west side of the property.
And Mr. Berardi, sorry to interrupt, guys. While we're talking about landscaping, it looks like there are some existing mature trees on the property. Is that right?
There are a lot of mature trees, and we're really trying to populate with building and parking the site in a manner that really preserves as much of the existing tree growth as possible. I think if you refer to the site plan, or the survey, it does show that there's a smaller amount of vegetation of existing canopy between JDD landscapes to the west and our property. And then it's actually quite a bit of canopy exists really at Parkway on the slope, as well as to the north towards Police District. So we're maintaining that. We're really working within the context of the existing, open site area where the existing building is, the existing gravel areas are, and other open spaces on the site that are sort of denuded. We don't have at the extreme north corner of the property. There will be some trees that will be removed in order to accommodate the building, since we've pushed the building that far north. But realistically, if we did an analysis of where that would be once it's staked, there is an immense amount of trees at the northwest of the property as buffer between District 4 as well as the landscape company to the west.
So the mature trees along Victory Parkway and along the street along Asman, those are going to be mostly preserved?
Well, we don't plan on moving any trees off of the Victory Parkway side. Again, we're not going down Victory Parkway other than the stair access that we'd like to have down to the parkway. But yeah, and again, you can look at an aerial map of the site and see exactly, the canopy where it exists. It's pretty heavy on from Victory on up to the top of the slope, and then to the north of the site, it's again a heavy canopy as a buffer between the police station and to the west, again, the JDD landscapes.
Yeah, I'm gonna attempt to share my screen. Can everyone see the Google image here
Yeah,
or the Google map?
yeah. Well, you're looking at
So these trees here, these are all going to be preserved, sort of
yeah,
along here.
Well, on the south edge, there'll be less preserved only because part of that will be relegated to parking. So we'll be planting, I think if you look at the site plan, we've shown some new planting, new trees to be located at the edge of Asman on our property, right where the cursor is.
Okay, so along here, there will be,
Yes.
you'll have to remove these trees, but
Yes.
there'll be new plantings, new vegetation, new screening and buffering
Exactly.
of the parking lot.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Ronnie, this is Sean Suter. Question for you. See, how many projects of this type have you been involved with again, roughly?
Well, we work in 32 states, and we've occupied better than 250,000 units. Let's put it that way.
And this parking issue probably comes up quite often with these.
Typically in communities like Cincinnati, Cleveland, other larger metropolitan areas, it's less of an issue because it's understood that our elderly populations really do not have access to cars or don't drive at all. But we still develop parking regardless. And as I go back to the beginning, the comments that I made at the very beginning, we typically develop parking well beyond what we really need. And it becomes, a drainage area issue. So we're creating more issue by adding the parking than by leaving it off.
And in your opinion, is a requirement to have 1.5 spaces per unit applied to a senior housing excessive?
I believe it is, yes. I think that 1.5 is typically the ratio, and sometimes 2 is the ratio for multifamily housing, family housing, occupied family housing, but not senior housing. And Cincinnati has addressed that issue in the past on other projects as well, in terms of, not holding to the 1.5. So variances have been granted for less than 1.5 spaces in Cincinnati. Again, major metropolitan areas. Look, for example, in downtown Columbus, there is no parking requirement.
Right. And we're proposing a ratio of 1.18 per unit. Is that correct?
Yeah, and frankly, if I had to make a suggestion to everyone here, I would probably eliminate that row of parking that parallels Asman to where it helps you preserve more of that existing vegetation rather than not just us planting something. And that to me would be where I would go with it. But again, I think that the variance request is to hold it to where we are.
And is 1.18, a ratio of 1.18 spaces per unit, excessive still in your?
Yeah, I just mentioned that it is. I think it is excessive, but that's my opinion based on what I've seen around the country where we develop in urban settings.
And you did an as-built study though, right? Pretty much did help address this issue on behalf of your other clients, and you found 0.4, 0.5 was.
Well, it was, with National Church Residences engaged me a number of years ago, and it was really a simple study. I mean, we analyzed 20 of their properties around the country, and we found that we were parking 0.45 spaces per unit for elderly housing. At that time, National Church Residences, again, the largest provider of elderly housing services in the country, who's been a client of ours for 33 years now, just engaged that, and they've mitigated their parking requirements, or we typically get variances to one, or if we can get down to 0.75 spaces, in most cases we do.
Right. So,
And it's typically approved.
and at 1.18 spaces per unit in this type of development, do you anticipate, and with 59 spaces for 50 units, do you anticipate parking overflow into the neighborhood and onto the public rights of way?
No, again, as I mentioned earlier, and I don't mean to be, a little bit, cavalier about this, but what I mentioned earlier, and it goes back to what Sandra mentioned, and I'm totally supporting her comment because I've seen it in all of our elderly environments, whether it's assisted living, independent living, nursing homes or otherwise. Unfortunately, there is very little visitation during holidays. And so the spillover you would have to imagine that would occur in those times. Again, I have 50 parking spaces, in excess of 50 parking spaces on this property. The likelihood is we may park maybe 30 tops. So you have an excess of some parking there that could really be accommodated. Again, these are just my opinions, but they're opinions based on what I've seen, what we've developed around the country.
And let me ask you this question relative to traffic generation or trip generation. Do you have any data on that or experience with that?
Yeah,
and,
you can.
Is this type of density, population density, does it justify doing a traffic impact study?
Not at all. I mean, the reality of it is, again, you're going to find that this is a population that largely isn't working. Or maybe a greeter at Walmart or Costco. The problem is that, you don't have the traffic out and traffic in at the same times that normal neighborhood traffic occurs. What ends up happening is that someone, if they do have a car, may go to the grocery store midday to mid-afternoon, not at 8 o'clock in the morning during rush hour or 7 o'clock during rush hour, or be look, I mean, it's an elderly population who are sensitive to movement to begin with. A lot of elderly folks, including myself, are not going to put themselves in the middle of traffic at 5:30 at night just to go to the grocery store. They're going to go during off times, off peak hours for other traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Berardi. I would stipulate that I think of anyone on this call today, in this meeting today, that Mr. Berardi has the most experience with this type of development, and I don't think that can be disputed. So thank you for your testimony today. That's all I have.
We can send resumes.
Mr. Suter, is there anyone of your witnesses that can speak to the accessibility of public transit in the area?
If anyone can, that would be great. I don't know. Sandra or Daniel, do you know the location of the nearest bus stop?
I mean, because look, this is not downtown Columbus or Cincinnati. This is
right.
This is not this. I don't know to what extent we have easy access to public transit in this space where folks will be able to rely on that instead of cars when necessary.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So as we know it today, there is a bus stop at the corner of Assman and Victory Parkway. There's also a bus stop at the corner of Reading Road and Assman. And in the past, the bus transportation group, they have been willing to consider applications and requests for additional stops, and that's something that they would study on their end as well.
Yeah. I can add, Shen, David, I can add, if you will, that there are two at Assman and Reading, and one in each direction, right at Assman and Reading, and then there are two more just north across from the police station on Assman as well.
And SOAC also have a 12-passenger van that we utilize a lot.
Okay. And is Mr. Evans still on the call?
Yes, I believe he's our next witness, but if there's a specific question, please feel free.
Yeah, I thought you guys were about to rest. Yeah, I just wanted to ask him about the hillside stuff, but why don't you go ahead? But Mr. Berardi said that Mr. Evans might be able to more, answer with more certainty about hillside disturbance. So, but I'll let you guys go ahead. But that question is coming, just so you know.
Yes, Your Honor. We're still going to call Jonathan Evans, a civil engineer, and Mike Westerfeld of West Tech Environmental to address the remaining issues. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Berardi, just one more question. You mentioned that when you were initially planning this development, that you observed a lot of other apartment buildings in the area. Could you just speak to the predominant land use pattern near this site, and does the building you proposed match the character of the neighborhood?
Not at all. I mean, I don't try to make my buildings look like warehouses and manufacturing areas, and that's a little bit of what you have around here. I mean, a police station, notwithstanding a police station, you have a different type of building, but JD Landscape and some of the other locations along Victory south of Asman are really not the type of architecture that we try to match. The older buildings along it to the south edge of Asman, again, I wouldn't try to match that. So, I mean, we take our own approach on behalf of our clients, especially Kingsley, to really develop, special product, something that really, creates an identity that doesn't say I'm a piece of government housing in the back that has a certain connotation. We try to really distinguish these buildings to where they look like really have the appearance of high-end product rather than just an average pedestrian type of architecture. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but even the buildings farther north.
That's a great correction. Thank you. My point is just there are other apartment buildings very nearby, correct?
Yeah, there are, and they're totally different. They're aged and our vernacular. There isn't a commonality of anything that we want to try to match or meet.
Mr. Berardi, is it the building design compatible with the surrounding neighborhood?
It far exceeds it, in terms of that, in that regard. I mean, again, I don't try to match warehousing architecture and what I do for housing.
Thank you, Mr. Berardi. Next, we'd like to call Mr. Jonathan Evans, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Mr. Evans. Could you tell us about your role on the project, please?
Yes, I'm with Evans Engineering. We provide civil engineering and surveying services within the greater Cincinnati area here. And we're working with Kingsley and Company on this development to provide site plans for the development, site engineering, civil plans for the development.
And what are some of the practical difficulties you encountered in your role in this project?
Well, most of them been, discussed already. It is on a previously developed site. There is, a lot of topography across the site, from the west side to the east side. We were pretty fixed on the access point. We actually were, when we first submitted, we were attempting to use the access point that was there, and Department of Transportation asked us to move it kind of down the slope on Asman a little bit so it aligned exactly at Ledgewood or the street across. But we're fixed on the access point. There's again a lot of topography issues here, and trying to get the utilities. But the biggest challenge was clearly trying to make the project work with the building and the unit configuration, and then the number of parking spots, which has been discussed at length already, so I don't need to belabor on that anymore. But those were probably the biggest challenges we had from an engineering or civil engineering standpoint.
Could you expand on the topography issues? Could you describe the steep slopes to the east and the soil issues that were mentioned earlier, please?
Yeah, so that, obvious, as, if anyone's been to the site would know, there's, it rises up quite a bit from Victory Parkway, flattens out across the middle, and then slopes up to the west over towards, the Doan Center, I guess it is. But the geotechnical report, the borings that were done indicated that there were some fills placed over the years, potentially on the eastern half that were, say undocumented or not the best to build upon. So that's why the building was shifted north and west on the site, as George alluded to already. One, to give better, land to build on, and then secondly, to provide a bigger parking area to the south, for the spots that are needed for the building.
So is it fair to say that a good portion of this lot is not buildable?
Well, the buildable's subjective, I guess. I mean, it's financially buildable, might be a better way to put it, but you can spend a tremendous amount of money, building across that hillside and putting in ridiculous, retaining walls to provide more parking. But it's not, wouldn't be a good practice to build across that slope that's going down to Victory Parkway.
It'd be practically difficult to do that.
That's correct. But yeah.
Now, were you, Mr. Westerfield might be better to speak to this, but were you involved in the environmental side of this project at all?
No, we're only we don't do that as a firm, first of all, but secondly, we're only involved in the engineering and surveying side of this project.
All right, I think that's all we have for now. Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Hey, you're welcome.
And we'd like to call Mr. Mike Westerfield, please.
Okay, I'm Mike Westerfield. I am President and Project Director at West Tech Environmental Solutions. I can go into the summary of what we've done and what we are providing as far as a remedy. You want me to do that?
Sure. Can you just give us a bit of a background on your company and your experience in developments like this, please?
So our company is a environmental company that helps clients, developers, architects acquire, redevelop, and use properties in a safe manner. So we've been in business for 23 years, mostly doing work with residential or with real estate properties, whether it's residential, industrial, multifamily, etc. So we have quite a bit of experience. We don't do everything. We generally don't do a lot of like wetlands work, environmental compliance. We do a little bit of health and safety, but our meat and potatoes is assessing properties for contamination like this, and again, helping our clients remediate or safely manage what we find.
And so could you tell us about why it was necessary to have your firm involved with this project? What was contaminated about the property, and what have you come up with as a solution, please?
So we started out with a phase 1 environmental site assessment. And I'll try not to get too technical, but I'll be happy to go there if somebody needs me to. So we did a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is just a detailed study of the property surrounding areas, using a bunch of historical information, environmental databases, a site reconnaissance. We concluded that the property was used prior as a Ohio National Guard armory, where they maintained and stored vehicles there. So those types of properties would be anticipated to have some type of environmental impact. So our phase 1 report identified that as a potential issue. We went from there to conduct a phase 2 environmental site assessment, in which included sampling. So phase 1 doesn't include any type of soil, groundwater, soil gas, subslab sampling, air sampling. But a phase 2, that's where you collect your samples, analyze your samples, and if you have detections or you find contaminants, you start doing the risk assessment about who might this harm, whether the environment, receptors in the environment, or human receptors. So we conducted a phase 2 environmental site assessment, installing a number of soil borings at the site from which we collected soil samples. We did not encounter any groundwater above the top of the bedrock. So no groundwater samples were collected. And we also collected subslab vapor samples, which is essentially just air beneath the slab of the existing building to see if we have any contaminants there. We didn't find anything in soil, anything that was remarkable, certainly nothing that exceeded any EPA standards. By the way, the EPA standards we used were all residential standards, which are the most restrictive or the most stringent, if you will. So we found nothing in soil that exceeded any unrestricted EPA standards. But in one of our subslab samples, we found a concentration of naphthalene that when we analyze that, we take the data, we run it through a modeling program that the US EPA developed that predicts what indoor air sampling would be in a building, or what indoor air quality in a building would be. That concluded that the concentration of naphthalene would be anticipated to exceed a building that would be over that location. So naphthalene is a hydrocarbon that is typically found in fuels like gasolines or diesel fuel. So the question is then, where's the source? Is the source on site? Is it off site? It's probably hanging out beneath the building. But I don't think, just based on the sampling data, the soil sampling data, and we did have a soil boring inside the building in which we did not find naphthalene. So I think the source of this naphthalene is shallow beneath the building and very confined in lateral content. So our data indicates that if you would build a building over this or near this, that you could anticipate the indoor air quality in that building would be adversely degraded and would exceed an EPA standard for indoor air. So in response to that, we could do a number of things. We could remediate those soils and get rid of the impacted soil that has naphthalene in it. We could treat it in place. We could dig it up, haul it off site, or we could simply mitigate the risks that those naphthalene vapors would have to any receptor or humans living in a building. So what we've decided to do is to install a subslab depressurization system or subslab ventilation system into the building that is proposed to be built. The proposed remedy is a passive system, which means we put pipe in the ground under the slab. We connect those pipes to risers that run up through the building, exit through the roof, and then passively vent the vapors under the building. That, in conjunction with the vapor barrier that will be installed, is a part of this building. We think it'll be effective in mitigating any of these vapors from entering the building at a concentration above EPA standards. If for whatever reason our passive system isn't effective and we find that we have high concentrations of this naphthalene coming in, we have the recourse of making this passive system active. And that is simply done by putting suction fans on the pipe on top of the roof that would actively then suck the vapors out from under the slab and discharge them into the environment.
And it's your opinion that this plan will make the building safe for the residents? There will not be any serious threat to their health?
I think it'll be over-engineered. Yeah, I personally think that just the placement of a vapor barrier probably will solve the problem. But I think it's good practice to put at least the passive system in. So yeah, I have a high degree of confidence that what we're doing here will work.
Thank you, Mr. Westerfield. Those are all the questions I had on the environmental issue. Mr. Examiner, do you have any questions on the environmental?
I have one. I'm not sure it's where does it go when it's ventilated out? What happens to that stuff? It's just go in the air.
Goes in the atmosphere, yeah.
And that's all okay.
It'll break
the
down.
EPA.
Yeah.
Okay.
No permit required. It'll eventually break down. So these hydrocarbons, whether they're in the ground or in the atmosphere, will break down into less toxic compounds.
Okay. That's all I had. Mr. Ndukwe, did you want to add something?
Unless JP, did you have another question?
Those are all my questions for Mr. Westerfield.
Yeah, the only thing, just Your Honor, Dave, the only question I had, Mike, I mean, you're doing this same technology on another affordable housing project.
A number of them. Yeah, we're just, we just installed a vapor barrier and we'll be, yeah, I mean, we're doing this almost on a daily basis these days. A lot of it is related to radon and the process is the same. So if you're familiar with what a radon mitigation system does, it's the exact same technology. We're just moving vapors. So we're doing a lot of affordable housing projects that related to radon, but we do have a couple of them going right now that are more chemically related. And we're in the middle of one downtown that we actually just installed a vapor barrier on. And once the building's constructed, we'll finish the ventilation system.
Thanks. Yep, that's all I had for Mr. Westerfield.
I do believe we will call Mr. Davis, who will be our last witness. Does anyone have any other questions on the environmental side before we move to him, please?
When you say anyone, do you mean any one of your witnesses or any of the people on the call?
We want to give a full opportunity for people to get the answers they need on the environmental issues. I know that's a concern that's been raised.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with going out of order, particularly if witnesses are going to be leaving or plan to leave after their testimony. We do have some folks that I think may be interested in asking questions. So to Walter and Sarah Kuski, I know that you mentioned some things about contaminants in your written statements. Did you want to ask any questions directly of Mr. Westerfield?
I would like to, yes.
Sure, go ahead. And Mr. Kuski, let me go ahead and just swear you and Sarah in. If you could both raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear?
You did already, sir.
Did we? Okay, yeah, that's right. I did. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, I would have questions about venting to a roof stack on a 47-foot building behind a hill that is 58 feet higher than the roof line, with a building that is 25 to 30 feet higher than the crest of the hill, with a predominantly western wind. I would say that what you have is called downwash. You're in the lee, and this is a eddy diffusion or downwash situation where your plume will wash back down to your residence when the wind is from the west. I would assert that when the wind is from the east, because you're at the height, essentially at the height of the school, your plume impacts directly on the school. Have you done dispersion modeling or human health risk assessments to ascertain that in fact your ventilation system will not have an adverse impact on neighbors, the police, or the neighbors to the south, the school to the west, or the police station to the northwest, or residents of Norwood to the east.
I have not, but I'll add, I've never been requested or required to do that.
This is a variant situation where they're moving this building closer to the school. So I think there is a very high standard that the examiner has to exert. There's no potential for adverse impacts here. So I would assert that in this variant situation where it's non-conforming, we would be very interested in finding out if these things have been considered.
I would, just as an opinion, I would think that if those studies were done, they would show no adverse impact.
Well, we have not seen the phase 1, the phase 2, or your remediation plan. So I can only comment in general terms that I think this is appropriate, granted the standards of review for a variance of this type. That's all.
Mr. Berardi, did you have something to add on this issue, please?
No, I just had a question. I mean, Mike, are you not meeting EPA standards by what you're doing?
Yes.
Thank you.
This technology is endorsed and embraced by US EPA and every state EPA we've dealt with.
And your methodology for dispersion meets EPA requirements. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
There's standards to install these things to get the proper draft across the vent. And I'm sure they're based on some analysis like that. But so yes, so our construction will be consistent with those standards.
Thank you.
I would like to also ask, are those residential standards? And are those do those standards apply to the students or the residents nearby? You're talking about protecting the residents with this remedial action, correct?
Correct. Yes. So yes. So these ventilation systems like they are identical almost always to a radon mitigation system. Radon mitigation is almost always installed in residential, either houses, multifamilies, apartments, etc. So it meets a residential standard for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Westerfield. We would call our final witness, Mr. Ozzie Davis, please. Ozzie, I apologize.
It's all good.
Thank you for talking with us today, Mr. Davis. Could you explain your relationship to the development, please?
Thank you. My name's Ozzie Davis, and I'm the lead consultant for Davis and Associates. We do community engagement and advocacy across the city, and we've worked with several developers here in Avondale, as well as in Mount Auburn, Walnut Hills, and many other empowerment zone neighborhoods. The experience that I've had with Kingsley has been totally different than any experience that we've had with any other developer, particularly in their innovative desire to go further with community residents. Blair Loft project in Avondale, the work that the Kingsley did with the residents on Van Antwerp, attest to their willingness to work with residents. There hasn't been a project, Blair Lofts on Reading Road at Blair. There hasn't been a project that we have seen Kingsley work on where residents weren't highly considered. And I think the ideal of having a Black-led subject matter expert development partner came from those innovative ideals of how to get the actual resident that will live in the building more involved in the development. To have a senior-only affordable housing opportunity. And I say senior-only because it's not being raised enough that most of the senior housing availability around this property is CMHA property, and CMHA property is not senior only. There are 35-year-olds in there, or 30-year-olds in there that may have another type of disability, and that's caused several disturbances for our seniors across neighborhoods like ours, and of course, Paddock Hills and North Avondale are our neighbors. This type of housing is so dearly needed. I attended the Paddock Hills Assembly meeting when this project was raised. And it seems to me that the parking variance, the question about remediation were the two things that I heard at Paddock Hills, and they seem to have been duly answered here. I saw Sue and Mara over at Sugar and Spice just last week, and Sue spoke specifically about the hillside, and I think her husband has addressed the remediation as well with the subject matter expert. I appreciate Mr. Berardi on the variance of the parking variance matter, because it's one that residents in many neighborhoods often have, not just with Kingsley, but with all developers that are. I've got a development on my street that the port is doing. First thing, residents on my street, yo, what's up with the parking? And it was interesting how he denoted that the 1.5 is just far too many. So here in Avondale, there's the Beechwood apartment has 149 units, 75 parking spaces, only 30 people on the Beechwood Drive, 149 units. It's a senior building, CMHA senior building on Burnett, 29 Beechwood, 149 units, 75 parking spaces, 30 people drive. I think that points to what Mr. Berardi was speaking to, as to seniors don't drive as much as younger families. And my last point would be to go back to just how important and necessary this type of housing is, to have 50 units of quality affordable housing. Like the work that Kingsley has done in neighborhoods has been high class. You can't tell. It looks just like any. It looks like a Schimberg property. It looks like any other first class property. And for a kid that went to Walnut Hills and drove down Victory Parkway a lot, it seems that it would brighten up that corner behind the Armory. So I wanted to bring that piece of interest to both my friends in North Avondale and my friends in Paddock Hills, as well as to you, Mr. Sturkey, as you bring this hearing. So I thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do any of the applicant's witnesses want to supplement their testimony at this time before we rest? All right. Well,
I'll make a comment.
Sure.
For whatever it's worth. Once we install this mitigation system, there's always post-mitigation sampling. So we will verify the system will work, and we'll have analytical data to show that. So if anyone would want to see, prove to me that this is working, at the conclusion of the project, we'd have that in hand.
thank you, Mr. Westerfield. All right.
Okay.
Then, Mr. Sturkey, I believe we are done with our part of the presentation, although we would reserve time for a closing statement and the right to cross-examine anyone else that speaks, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's see. Now is time for public comment. So that will include the community councils as well as anyone else that has joined us here from the public that would like to testify. We did have someone that I noticed was trying to get in earlier, but I haven't officially checked in under Alan. Hopefully, Alan, you can hear us and you could unmute. I just want to quickly understand what your name is and who you represent here today.
My name's Alan Croft, and I'm a resident of North Avondale for 38 years. So representing neighborhood and personal interests.
Okay. Well, Alan, why don't, how do you spell your last name? Is it with a K?
K-R-O-T-H.
Okay. Well, while we're at it, why don't we go ahead and swear you in, and you can tell us what you'd like to say. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. What would you like to tell us today?
Well, again, the suddenness of information did not allow a lot of preparation on my part, that's for sure. I've been involved in a couple of other incidents of development and or I guess variances within the neighborhood. We've normally had sufficient time to reply. This actually, I think I've had about 5 days. So after listening to testimony, seeing the application, again, there is a great need. I agree with that. Whether that need's going to be met, sandwiching this property into an unlikely area, I don't know. Comments that are made about, they're going to be working, so they will be going in and out. Then there's other comment conflicting that says they're not going to be working, so we don't need parking spots. I've just discovered that there's a request to possibly build steps down to the parkway. Again, seems like that would be violating the parkway. So a lot of questions. I don't feel like I got a whole lot of answers that satisfy me, but I'm sure the city will be moving forward as they see fit. I run through the neighborhood, have for 30 plus years. I run by that property all the time. Do I think a building, an attractive building in there such as has been designed would look good? Sure. Do I think that 30, 40 units might work better so you don't have the parking issues, the sandwiching issues, the hillside issues? Probably, but that's not for me to say.
Okay. So was it, of the requested zoning relief, is it safe to say that your biggest concern is with traffic and parking?
Parking, environmental, and violation of the parkway.
Gotcha. What did you say about the parkway?
I think, again, I heard that there's going to be steps. I don't know, is that on this property? Is it on the parkway's property? I don't know. This is the first I ever heard.
That's a good question. Let me go to real quick to our zoning staff. Are you aware of any plans for steps, or maybe a better question is, are they indicated on the site plan?
David, this is Wes. I don't see anything, just the first review of the drawings, but I think I remember talking to somebody on the applicant staff or applicant side about steps, but
so I'm reviewing the site plan that's been submitted as a part of the application. That's what I'm ultimately being asked to approve. If steps are not indicated on that site plan, then I will not be, then they will have to come in separately for that permitting for those steps.
David, we at once on an earlier rendition had steps in, but they have since been removed just based on cost and not wanting to tear down any trees on the parkway.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, Your Honor, the plans that you have are the plans that we're asking for the variance.
And they do not include steps.
Correct.
Got it. All right. Thanks.
Great.
All right. Okay, Alan, anything else you want to share before we move on?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, thanks for being here. Thanks for being patient. I really appreciate getting neighborhood input. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
All right. Let me see. I think we'll move on to we have any other individual property owners that aren't represented in an organization that would like to say anything here today? Okay. All right. We'll move on to the organizations then. And I'll start with Lina. Lina, you're representative of Paddock Hills Assembly again. What would you like to tell us today?
One of the things that they mentioned was a bus stop at Victory Park in Asman. There is no bus stop. There are no bus stops anywhere on Victory Parkway. Because of the style of the parkway, they chose that it was too much traffic, people speeding. So they didn't put one down there. I talked to Metro and there's no plans to put one on Asman and Victory Parkway. I was going to address the steps because the steps would have gone to nowhere. There are no sidewalks on Victory Parkway at all. That's something that we've actually put in our community budget request so that we can access Lower Millcrest Park, which is directly across the street from the proposed building. Some of the other, they would have to walk up if they did not drive and they wanted to catch a bus. They'd have to walk uphill all the way to Reading Road, and which is quite a hike for anybody. And when we talk about seniors, they're talking about seniors, which I agree, there's a lot of use, we need senior housing. But 55 and older, many of those residents are still working. And they would be driving because they wouldn't be able to catch a bus unless SOAC would be delivering them to the job and from the job every day. We realized that they could use Metro. I'm not sure exactly what the term is as far as coming to pick them up for individual doctor's appointments, taking them to various locations. That would be one thing. There are no grocery stores anywhere near this building. They'd have to go to Norwood. Again, no bus lines. There's really no retail whatsoever. It just seems to be an illogical place for the building. I realize that doesn't address the variance. The other thing, when I pull up Cage's maps, there is part of the Hillside Overlay District on that property. If they're pushing the building further north, they're actually bumping into that. One of the problems that we have in Paddock Hills that many of the homeowners here have had to pull in engineers and have them design systems to stabilize their houses on the hillside districts because we have so much slippage. And we've had several homes that have had to pull in engineers to stabilize the backside of their house, literally put footers down and build all the way down to the bedrock to keep their houses from falling off the hillside. So those are some of the things that we've looked at in the overlay district, and we did send that in with our exhibits. And when I pull it up now, there's a corner of the property that is at the northwest end of the property, and it's very visible on the Cage's maps. So those are some of the things that we were looking at, was particularly no bus lines, no transportation, no retail, no grocery stores, the hillside issue, burping out. We realized that, yes, it would be dispersed, but across the street, you have Lower Millcrest Park where the kids play soccer, they have baseball, they have all kinds of activities. You have the concern, and I know that from living in Paddock Hills with the hillside, very often when we drop down to Tennessee Avenue, you can smell everything down there. It's amazing the difference with the low-lying locations, which you can smell. And we have a lot of chemical plants, so they've had to do all kinds of activities to make sure that we're not receiving any of the fumes from their plants. We've got Solvay, and right now I can't think of the other one. So that's pretty much what we had talked about in our letters. The building, the other concern is if the building is that far up against the hillside, and if there's any type, if they have not tried to pound foundation supports in there. Whether that's going to loosen the soil and whatever is behind the building, it could come tumbling down at some point in time. That's the problem with our neighborhood, and is that houses can be here for 50 years, all of a sudden something happens and the back end starts to slide off. So that's all I have for right now.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Orr. I want to just attempt one final time, and I'm going to open this question up to literally every person in the room, including the zoning staff. I'm going to share my screen. Can anyone tell me definitively whether or not this building here in what I think is the northwest corner is going to overlap with the Hillside Overlay District, which is this darkly shaded blue color?
David?
It's
Yes.
about 8 to 10 feet.
I can say, that was something we looked at, and based on the mapping in KGIS and the site plan, we did not find that the building is being constructed in the hillside boundaries.
Okay, gotcha. I guess it's a slightly different question whether
I would like
construction-
to address that because you can clearly see the property line and the shaded area, and you can clearly see that the shaded area overlaps the property line to the west and north. It could not be clearer. The white line is the property line.
So, Mr.
From
Kuski,
the corner of the existing building.
I believe you're right. I don't think anyone's disputing that there is overlap there with the property line. My question is more specifically, will the building overlap, which you can see here on the site plan, will the building overlap with the blue? And the zoning department has determined that it won't, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes, that was our review.
Okay.
I would assert the point is moot because your city code says if any part of the property is in a hillside district, the entire property must be treated as a hillside district. So yes, you are building on a hillside. That's your code as I read it. I've attached that and you can reference it later.
Yeah, what is the code reference on that?
It's in your hillside rules. We'll produce it for, I'll get it for you in a minute.
Okay, great. All right, Ms. Orr, anything else that you want to share at this time?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. Okay.
I have it for you, Mr. Sturkey. It's section 1433-05. The entire property must be treated as a hillside district as follows. Any real property, either whole or part within said moderate, high, or high susceptibility area should be classified as being within a hillside district.
Right. Well, we can dig down on that right now a little bit more. We have our zoning administrator here. So what is your interpretation of that code section? Does that mean that the area highlighted in blue is what they have determined to be the high susceptibility area, and the areas outside of that are not high susceptibility areas and therefore should be treated differently?
And did you say 1433-05? Is that
correct?
Is that reference? And that
real quick,
I would say that we use the boundaries shown in the KGIS map. We have never, we use that as the affected boundary of the Hillside Overlay District in the city. The boundary shown as the overlay in KGIS.
Yeah, and I'm not seeing that in 1433-05.
I have one interjection. When you pull up the property report for 4106 through KGIS maps, one of the things that it says, land development, Cincinnati only, landside potential high. And it says.
But it says hillside district, no, right?
It does, but it does say landslide potential high. So the concern is that once you start building and you start generating vibrations and movement and everything else, is that hillside going to come down to the back of the building? And whether it's when it's built Or if it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, are you putting people at risk by living in a building that there is landslide potential, high landslide potential?
Sure. So,
I would-
sorry, go ahead.
Well, I would say the building plans examination is looking at, the geotechnical stability and, the structural, the soils, the geotechnical reports, all of the hillside stability from a general building code compliance standpoint when the permits come through. We are just reviewing for the hillside standards when a building is within those boundaries to find contagious.
I think that's right. And, if the applicant would like to touch on landslide or hillside stability again in rebuttal, they'll have that opportunity. But I think the point has been made. The proximity to this hillside is very tight. Okay, to the Kuskis and the Northside Avondale Neighborhood Association, what would you all like to tell us?
So it's the North Avondale, not North Side, North.
I'm sorry about that. North Avondale.
Yeah, I'm going to read my statement because I'm not a great public speaker. So North Avondale Neighborhood Association believes that we were not properly notified and is requesting, we already went through this, but we had requested the postponement of the hearing. The project is in Paddock Hills, but we have its entrance into North Avondale on Asman Avenue, across from Ledgewood. NANA has supported Paddock Hills in their opposition to this project. The NANA Executive Board is submitting a second letter requesting postponement of this hearing and due to a number of questions that are, until a number of questions are addressed, including the lack of community engagement. So we want to stipulate that we only meet monthly and the residents have not had an opportunity to fully understand all the implications of this development. So on July 19th, we were notified by Paddock Hills Assembly and invited to their meeting on the 25th. On August 22nd, NANA received an email introduction by the City Department of Community and Economic Development to Kingsley and Company. So they couldn't even find, I don't think that NANA is that hard to find, especially with all the people on the team. But then on November 1st, NANA invited Kingsley and Company to present. The Kingsley presentation was less than 5 minutes and a small brochure dated July 18th provided. At that meeting, NANA requested information on the OFA application and scoring and the documentation on phase 1 and phase 2 environmental studies. On November 8th, we sent another email requesting Kingsley to follow up on this environmental information. Still no response. The hearing notice was received from PHA, not from the city. North Avondale Neighborhood Association was not even notified. We checked the mailbox again on Sunday. There's still no notification of the hearing. We have a concern about the environmental impact study. The site was contaminated soil from a previous use for decades as an Army Reserve vehicle service garage and a landscape operation. Human carcinogens and pesticides would likely be the soil contaminants, and the applicant has not provided sufficient information on the environmental assessments or cleanup plans to city or to NANA's request. The applicant requests a variance to move the building closer to the school and the police station than it is allowed by code. Hillside Overlay District. The 50-unit project is too large for the site and impacts a Hillside Overlay District and is unable to support the adequate parking in the city code. All Hillside Overlay Districts are required by code to include a soil study and a landside evaluation. We have not seen this to date. Traffic study. No traffic study has been supplied to study the parking and traffic impacts on traffic at Ledgewood and Asman. The applicant requests a zoning variance for the parking lots in violation of the city code along Asman and Victory instead of behind the building as code requires. Victory Parkway has city parks on both sides of the parkway and a required green space. Additional parking lots along Victory Parkway would be a detriment to the work by Xavier University, the city parks, and Nana Park volunteers to raise the appearance of the historic parkway. The applicant also requests a variance for 16 cars less than the code requires. This means that any extra cars end up in North Avondale streets. This area already has 9 apartment buildings that are grandfathered with inadequate parking. So those are our points, but we also wanted to say that this, so some of the comments before, that senior housing doesn't require the parking is not really true, because these people are 55 years and older. It's very likely that they will be married and they're required to work, is our understanding is that they're required to work and provide an application. So they're gonna be most likely be married and have cars and be working. And at 55, I don't know about everybody on this call, but some of our kids are still living with us at 55. So I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that 55 plus and calling it senior assisted living is not really accurate. We also believe that just because there's other buildings that have parking on the corner or on the street does not mean we should add to the problem. I mean, everyone sits here and talks about how it's an eyesore, and then we're gonna, if we allow it, then we just add to the eyesore and add parking right on the same street that we just criticized. And they keep talking about the Armory building, and my understanding is that the Armory building is gonna go, and that's where the building is part of the Armory, that small landscaping shack vehicle repair building on the property will be removed. So I'm not sure why they keep referring to it, that the landscaper would still be there, because he would not still be there. He would be gone. It's part of that property. The current landscaper. That's all. Thank you.
I would add one thing.
Sure.
We're talking about a bus stop at Reading and Aspen. There is no light, there's no crosswalk, there is no control there. So you're asking our seniors, our 55 and olders who don't have cars, to cross Reading Road where the posted speed is 45 and the actual speed is well in excess of that, around a blind corner in the dark to get to that bus stop. So this is on its face not advisable. That would be if you're headed towards south. If you're southbound, you have to cross Reading Road there to get to the described bus stop.
There's no crosswalk.
Okay. Just one point of clarification. You said that were you able to present this to the larger general body yesterday?
Last night, yeah.
Yes.
And was there any sort of vote, or did you not have enough information to get there?
We just presented the information that we had and the information that we were lacking.
My vote, I requested and received 100% positive vote for my two submittals. The other ones had already gone through executive board review, but the two things I submitted regarding hillside and environmental, there was 100% positive vote to endorse those letters.
Got it.
Not covered yet. Well, we sort of.
Okay, thank you.
So you
yeah, Walter, did you want to add anything else?
I had two subjects that I believe are largely unaddressed concerns. One is the hillside district that we have started to brush on. We assert that this property is in a hillside overlay district. The required geotechnical and soils report have not been conducted. We further assert that were these studies conducted, they would conclude that the frontage of Victory Parkway and around the corner on Aspen are contiguous, copy bedrock, and have a continuous slope of 20 degrees. As per your code, then that area must also be protected. So if you're in an overlay district and the property also contains additional property that is contiguous to an overlay district, has copy bedrock and a slope of 20%, that should be included. So I would insert that the frontage conforms to those requirements as well, the frontage on Victory Parkway. This is in my report. You can review it at your leisure. City code requires if any part of a property is in a hillside district, the entire property must be treated as such. Lacking the required Hillside Overlay District protections. This application is neither complete nor perfect. Neither the applicant nor the city identified these issues, and the required documents such as the geotechnical analysis and soil report of record are not in the record. Therefore, we further assert that any action by the planning examiner is premature. And the lack of the associated documents also denies meaningful public participation in regard to the Hillside District. Moving to the environmental. We've already established most of this. There are phase 1 and phase 2 reports, so I'll breeze through that. We have not seen the phase 1 or phase 2 report or the remedial action plan. Once again, this denies meaningful public participation in this hearing. We've already identified that naphthalene is being emitted from a stack in the remediation plan for this facility. I have supplied information showing that, as I described earlier, as a result of being in the lee of a hill, the plume can be severely affected. The emissions from that stack will be severely affected. They can be affected by downwash. And because it's not 47 feet in the air, but more representative of a point blank situation with the police station and the Doane Academy, there is not going to be the typical mixing associated with dispersing from an elevated point such as a roof, allowing mixing before it reaches the ground. So this is an unaddressed concern, and I would assert, North Avondale asserts, that it's not in the public interest to move this building and grant this variance to move this closer to Doane School and the police station. Your standard of review is detrimental or injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare in granting a variance. We believe that this is obviously not of public benefit and is detrimental to the neighbors. I think I had to kind of do this on the fly since I've learned a lot here, but I think that's generally my points of concern.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move towards or give the individual from the North Avondale Business Association an opportunity to weigh in. They have been patiently waiting here, so I think we have Miles Wolf and Maura Wolf from that organization. So, Mr. Wolf, are you ready to testify now? And,
yes.
And to the attorneys here, I'll give you an opportunity at this point to ask any questions if you would like, once everyone is finished testifying. So, Mr. Wolf, could you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for allowing us a chance to voice our opinion on this. As president and as treasurer and former president of the North Avondale Business Association, I was disappointed that the Business Association was not informed or asked to comment on this development on Aspen Avenue. We are a big part of North Avondale. We feel responsible for the business district, which runs along Reading Road from Clinton Springs down to Aspen Avenue. So Aspen is in our business district, and we feel like we should have received some notification of this proposed development. We did not receive any. I realize that the neighborhood association did receive some, but we are a recognized neighborhood group here, and I feel that we should have been on that list as well. We were not notified in any way. Second point, I do oppose the zoning variance for the number of parking spaces and for the required setback for this 50-unit multifamily project. These zoning rules are there for a reason, and that gives the developer the right to ask and receive any exceptions and variances. But when they are asking for exceptions, I feel like all issues should be addressed, both pro and con for these requests. And I don't feel like both sides of this has really been officially addressed. Thirdly, increased traffic and congestion on Asman and at the intersection of Victory Parkway and Asman is I don't feel has been addressed properly. It's already a dangerous place for cars. The light at Asman and Victory Parkway is regularly run. The red lights are run all the time, going both on Victory Parkway and Asman. I take that route frequently going up to Norwood, and I've seen accidents there and have been personally involved in several near accidents because of people running the light on Victory Parkway. It's a dangerous intersection. My last comment has to do with the variance for the trash and refuse dumpsters. They are required by zoning regulations. They're required not to be in the front yard of any multifamily development. Why is the location that will bring increased litter, potential trash drop-offs by individuals, and added noise being permitted in a residential setting? It seems like there's a big enough lot to accommodate this dumpster at a place where zoning recommends it to be placed, and all the drawings show it right up in the front of the facility, right in their front yard, right next to Asman Avenue. And the business association feels like this is going to add to increased litter and increased noise along the Asman Avenue corridor. That's our comments at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Were you speaking on behalf of Mara Wolf as well? The entire association?
Hey, I'll chime in real quick.
Could you activate your camera for me?
Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr.
Try.
Wolf. Testimony.
Okay.
Great, thank you. Could you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
Great.
I'm Mara Wolf, the North Avenue Neighborhood Association president, and I have been previously very much involved in North Avenue Neighborhood Association. I was the president, the treasurer for the last 12, 13 years. I've been involved in the organizations, and has also served as beautification chair. And I'd like to make the point that this area on Asman is a hot spot. It has been a known hotspot with our neighborhood and Keep Cincinnati Beautiful. As beautification chair, I often organize cleanups, and this is always a spot that we would take 20 neighborhood volunteers to pick up bags and bags of litter. Now, this litter is caused from all the housing along Asman that's income restricted housing. And there's a CMHA building also that's on the corner of Asman and Ledgewood and Victory. And it has a dumpster there as well, which is always overflowing. And we've always often tell city council about this problem with the CMHA property with overflowing litter. And it is just a problem that it just does not go away. People just throw out litter all over the place. I also want to address that it's a safety hazard that, as Miles pointed out, there are many accidents that happen at Victory Parkway and Ledgewood. And I have a personal story to say that my brother riding a bike was hit by a car, has suffered a coma, and has had for his whole life seizures because people are running lights. It's not a safe intersection for seniors to be walking around. There's no parking. There's no sidewalk, as Lina pointed out, on Victory Parkway. There's no sidewalk on the side of Asman. I guess it's the north side of Asman. There's no room for no room for a sidewalk because there's a hill right there. It's constantly full of cars, trash, and litter. People dump all along the side of that hillside, and it is a constant problem. And I definitely agree with everything that North Avenue Neighborhood Association has stated, and also the Paddock Hills Assembly. Their letters have been fantastic with the information that you need to deny this request. This is too big of a development, going in too small of a space with too many risks to the residents and to the people that live in North Avenue, Paddock Hills, and Norwood. Also, some of my requests were denied. I asked for the full, complete OFA application and the complete NOFA application. We were provided a link with a summary, and I have still not received those applications. By law, the developer is required to communicate and engage with the governments, as Lina had pointed out, in the areas, the people that the organizations that represent the people in the area. I would like to know if Norwood was notified. I know that North Avenue was not, and that has to, even though it's not technically in our neighborhood boundaries, there's still a requirement that within like a half a mile or so, they have to do outreach. The developer has to do outreach to the bodies that do represent those areas. I'd like to know what community support was provided in the OPA, because I understand there should be community support. Where did that community support come from? It didn't come from North Avondale. It didn't come from Paddock Hills. It didn't come from Norwood. So where did it come from? And the developers, we have to make sure that the developers are engaging with the community councils and with the residents, with the business associations, because then they don't, then we're going to end up in situations like this where you're going to have a docket full of variance requests. I mean, we could have pointed all these points out to them much sooner. And then our final point is that we have a really a situation here that should have been decided on the front end of this, should have never got this far, is that the concentration of poverty in our neighborhood in 45229 has got to stop. Now, people have to understand how this stuff works. There is a low income housing, restricted income housing. You can only earn so much to live there. It's a requirement. All along Asman, all along the CMHA building. This will be another one. There's probably a lot of, I know there's total more concentration in North Avenue than there are in other neighborhoods. And this has got to stop, because you have to understand how this works. Yes, we need affordable housing for seniors. Yes, we agree with that. We think it's a great need, and many people spoke today about how important that is. We agree with that. But the issue has to do with the way we're continuing to concentrate poverty in certain zip codes in Cincinnati. This is a problem. I'd like to know how many OFA projects have been approved, because what happens is that since you're restricted in the income, they have to provide referrals from all over the county, at least, maybe further than that right now with OFA requirements. So you are taking people with income restrictions, difficulties, disabilities, possibly from all of the other neighborhoods, all the other counties, or all around Hamilton County, and concentrating them into certain areas. Now, we know that when you do this, you have a situation where you have poor health outcomes, because you're concentrating more poverty in an area. That is a known fact. It is also a cause for segregation, unfortunately. We are a very inclusive community here in North Avondale, both on all different levels, on age, on economics, on all different types of levels. And so it's not right to keep on concentrating the poverty. And someone should have come to North Avondale, Paddock Hills before the application was sent in. So I think that for many reasons, this should be denied. But for the most important, there's definite health concerns for both vehicular, pedestrians, environmental, and these have to be resolved, and you have to deny this. So you should deny it. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'm not a great public speaker either, but it's very, I'm very passionate about North Avondale. We work really hard to improve the quality of life here. And in Plan Cincinnati, they say your city is supposed to engage with neighborhood councils and business associations. There was a law passed recently for community engagement. Nobody is following that law. It doesn't appear anyway. So we really have to make some improvements. And this is the first place you can say no and say, hey, developer, you need to do this work before you come to me for ask for a variance. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Wolf. I appreciate your time and your testimony here today. Okay, I'm going to move on to the zoning staff. I'm going to ask the zoning staff if they would like to provide any testimony in addition to their staff report or respond to anything you've heard today that you think you'd be able to provide some clarity to do that. But we're running up against time constraints, and the staff report will speak for itself today. Floor is open.
I don't care to make any more additional comments at this time.
Emily, anything else?
Yeah, no, I think in the effort of time, our staff report stands for itself.
Okay. And no, any point you wanted to put on the overlay district issue?
No, I mean, our analysis, it does cross the corner of the property. Our analysis showed that the building is not in the hillside, which is how we determine whether those standards are in effect. Wes did this morning just do some quick analysis if we were looking at this under the hillside standards. And that analysis did show it does meet the cumulative excavation and fill that's permitted within the hillside standards. And really, it would just change the setback relief that's requested because setbacks are determined a different way in the hillside. So that would be the primary difference in terms of zoning relief.
Okay.
It would be different setback relief.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'll go back to Mr. Suter and Mr. Burley. Mr. Burley, as I just stated, we are running up against some time constraint issues. So I'd ask you to use the next 20 minutes for any cross-examination, rebuttal, and closing remarks. If you need more time than that, unfortunately, we will end up continuing this case. So you have till 3 o'clock. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sturkey. There should be no need for a continuance. We will be efficient with our time. We do not have any cross-examination for the public comment. We just want to provide some quick rebuttal here. The issue of hillside stability. Mr. Evans, could you just reassure the public here, the building is not in the hillside, correct? I mean, this is going to be a very stable, secure building. There's no geotechnical issues here that we need to be concerned about.
Well, I can certainly attest that the building does not, from what I've seen or been presented or looked at in the past, the building does not overlay line. There will be there are geotechnical engineers that are involved in the project. There are both structural engineers involved in the project who design the foundation. So they'd be better suited to speak the integrity of the building. Maybe Mr. Berardi could as well. But yeah, I'm sorry. That's really all I could offer there.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Mr. Berardi, do you have anything to add on that point? Mr. Berardi, you're muted.
Soils engineering has been completed. Recommendations have been made. There are no findings of excessive foundation systems required by the location of the building. And a structural engineer is already involved in designing a standard foundation system based on normal foundation needs because of the building location.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Berardi. And just on the environmental issue, again, Mr. Westerfield, I mean, what the system you're designing is a best practice. This will comply with EPA regulations and, in your opinion, is safe for residents and for neighbors, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have anything to expand on that?
No, it meets EPA unrestricted standards.
All right.
It's about as stringent as you can get from an EPA standard.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Westerfield. I believe that's all we have for rebuttal at this time.
Okay. If you'd like to move into closing argument, if you have any closing remarks.
Yes, Mr. Examiner. As you are aware, there are specific standards that the applicant must satisfy in order to qualify for the special exception and the variances that have been applied for today. You've heard extensive testimony as to why this is in the public interest. It's in harmony with the zoning. The use is permitted by right. The zoning code specifically calls for apartment buildings of similar size and scale is what is being proposed here. There are the applicable planning documents, Plan Cincinnati, the Paddock Hills 1977 plan. Yes, the Paddock Hills Community Plan of 1977 and Plan Cincinnati. These both speak to the need for increased housing and specifically increased affordable housing, and that's exactly what this development will do. On the issue of traffic, you've heard from probably one of the most knowledgeable experts in traffic that you could hear from today. Mr. Berardi has been involved in too many developments of this scale to count. He has explained that it's highly unusual for age-restricted developments of this type to need more than 0.4 or 0.5 spaces per unit. And we are providing 1.18 spaces per unit. And that's much more than is necessary, and it's the absolute maximum that would be possible given the constraints on the property. There's very little risk that this is going to generate increased traffic. As Mr. Berardi explained, the most likely outcome is that on a busy day, on a holiday travel day, we'll have about 30 parking spots full of this 59 parking spot lot. There's extensive buffering. There's that already natural vegetation and screening surrounding this entire property that's going to be left largely intact. This is going to not be particularly visible from adjacent properties. We're complying with the landscaping requirements under the code. It's more than compatible with the neighborhood. It's going to be a benefit to the neighborhood. The design is a high quality one, and there are no adverse effects to the neighborhood as a whole. And the staff report concluded as much as well.
And I just add real quick, Mr. Sturkey, that all developments require some relief when you're talking about urban infill, and that's what we're dealing with here. There's no perfect solution. We're not in a green field out in the farm in Westchester where we can make everything just perfectly plumb and straight, right? This is a site that's underutilized. We've got to start using some of this underutilized property in our city to provide housing. And if the practical difficulties are just too much, which there are always going to be practical difficulties on these sites. We're in a hilly city, an old city. A lot of times we have parcel line issues, we have tight sites, we have environmental issues. That's the same, that's going to be the case in any urban infill project. So if we deny every project because it's challenging, we're never going to get the housing we need. And I think that's the reality. I think we've addressed all of the concerns with expert witnesses. These are not just lay opinions. These are people who do this kind of work all over the place. And they've given you their testimony today, which I think addresses all these issues. And so absolutely appreciate, the questions and the conversation and the back and forth, because it is important for everyone to make sure that we're addressing important issues, environmental, hillside, traffic, parking, all of that. But we did that, and we did that with experts who are known in this field and who do this type of stuff repeatedly, do these type of developments repeatedly. So long and short of it is, on balance here, we need the housing. This is going to serve a population who needs quality housing. One of the biggest problems in Cincinnati is we don't have quality housing. There's a lot of housing, but a lot of it's substandard, subpar. And we've got to treat our seniors better. This is just 50 units and on par with what we have there now. This is going to clean it up, and it's going to provide something that's needed in the community. So if you're doing the balancing test and the public interest, I think that outweighs any other concerns here, and the public will be well served by this, and these variances and the special exception are justified. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much for that closing presentation. All right, so there's obviously a lot to digest here. And so I'm going to take this under advisement. I also am required under the zoning code to do a site visit, which typically is sort of a drive and walk around type thing. And I think that might be appropriate in this case, so I can actually be on the ground and not just looking through Google Maps. Like I said, I'll be taking this under advisement, and I will render a decision in writing that I will share with everyone in this room, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. As soon as I finish those decisions, I put them into a PDF and I send them to everyone who's been a part of this hearing. So if you've testified here today, you will be receiving a copy of that. Those decisions are also appealable within 30 days. As soon as the 30 days is over, they're no longer appealable. Let's see, are there any questions about any of the process going forward? Okay. If anyone would like a status update on the decision, feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll let you know where I'm at, how far along, and when you can anticipate it. I think that's it. I know that this is a contentious issue. I appreciate everyone's civility here today, and I appreciate everyone's time and testimony. I know it was a pretty lengthy hearing as well. So I want to thank you all for that. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and you'll hear from me soon via email. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.